All right. Hi, this is Chasing Lions podcast. Today we have a very exciting topic, and I'd like to take everyone through. My name is Chan. I am a creative director as well as the host of the Chasing Lions podcast. This is a podcast mainly about how the process of creating great ads, great campaigns, great content, and doing so. There's this very amazing award show that's coming up soon, which is called the Cannes Lions Award Show.
Yeah.
And normally, what happens is that creators make these award entries, and there's always goes through this very tough process, which are judges. And today, I have Khangelani, which you'll let us know more about yourself.
Of course.
Khangelani has been nominated as a jury for the PR category. Yeah. And we'll take you through a bit of what that entails, what the Cannes Lions is, what the category you're involved in, the process of which you're going through right this moment.
Yes.
And also, the exciting news that's to come. What's also really exciting about the series is that we'll do this podcast, which is the before the event, and then there'll be a during where Khangelani will take us through the award show and see what's happening on the ground, and then post we'll do another podcast as a wrap up to see what had happened. So take it away,
Chan. Thank you so much for having me. But maybe as a way of introduction, my name is Khangelani Dziba, and I am currently the group head of PR and influencer marketing at Wrapped Creative. But I do like to refer to myself as the integrated brand guru. Get that right. Okay. Because I love this idea of being able to integrate across the different disciplines that exist within our industry, and just creating magic, which is what I think this opportunity with Cannes Lions has really brought to life, insofar as exposing me to the kinds of works that we could be doing as a country and where we can be taking inspiration. So I'm super excited to share, I guess, my reflections on the process thus far, obviously take you along the journey as well, and then reflecting on what we potentially can do post the awards, because I think everyone gets excited with the awards and the festival itself, as they should. But I think what it really provides us with is an opportunity to reflect on where our industry is and where it potentially can go, and how we can go about achieving that. So that's what I'm excited about.
And it's also like it's how we differentiate as South Africa versus the global stage. But before we get onto that, you have actually a long list of accolades that I think you actually carry up. So what is it that have you done in the past? Your judging experiences, the work that you've been involved in throughout your career that kind of it warrants you to be in a position as freaking Cannes Lions jury.
Yes, wow. It's always a weird one when someone asks you to speak about yourself like this, because I guess we've just been taught and socialized in a very different way. But thank you for the opportunity anyway. I'll take it. It's my time to shine. So I think for me, I've always been an avid fan of the industry. And I think I was kind of born into it because from a very young age, I participated in a lot of ad work in terms of commercials that were produced as a young kid. Little did I know I would end up, on this side as a much wiser person. I won't say older, but much wiser person, right? And I think for me, that's where the journey began in terms of this fascination and idealizing this world that not a lot of people actually have access to. But as one's journey goes, I guess our families, our parents have a different direction that they want us to take. Even though I was exposed to this, I may have thought I was going to be a lawyer or an optometrist or whatever, but the bug always just was with me.
So how creators always end up being that way. It's like you meander to all these things to only find out that your true passion is.
Right. So fast forward to when I completed my undergrad degree at Rhodes University, where I studied journalism journalism. And I think for me, the fascination with words and storytelling then brewed much bigger than I actually imagined, which led to me pursuing an honors degree, still at Rhodes University. But after that, I was just like, well, it's time for me to experience the world now.
Put it to practice.
Put it into practice. I mean, we've learned the theory and we know how to construct sentences, but it actually makes more sense when you apply this. So started my journey in Johannesburg in 2013. I think I may be giving away how old I am. But yes, in 2013, I started my journey in Johannesburg, worked for a company called Fleischmann Hillard. Actually, before then, I actually worked for a law firm. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I moved into Fleischmann Hillard, and that's where my, I guess, experience and interaction with the ad world sort of came about, at least from an agency perspective.
Okay, cool.
But the real experience with advertising, I think, began when I started working for a company called DNA Brand Architects, where I was for a very, very long time. Working with the likes of Sylvester Children.
Sylvester, yes.
Who is a pioneer, I think, for many of us, who want to see ourselves represented in the kinds of works and the industry that we are in. So as a Black queer child, I learned from the best. And I think for me, the important part to underscore is learned, because that was then the fuel that I needed to be able to chart my own trajectory and journey as a brand guru myself now. So I completed a master's degree as well from Vega School, which particularly focused on representation in the advertising industry and how it is as creatives we go about creating narratives that are inclusive and truly inclusive for not just for the sake of it, but as a way of connecting and resonating with consumers, which was a very big part of, I guess, how I got more acclaim in terms of my name. I mean, I've done a lot, and I still do a lot of thought leadership work, writing across different advertising platforms such as BizCom, where I won in, I think it was in 2015, most read contributor at some point. So that was really awesome. 2 years in a row, actually, because I was quite consistent, in terms of my contribution. And I think, again, it's because I live life as a student. I'm always excited at this idea of learning something new and then reflecting on it and reporting on it. It's a skill that I've acquired and I don't think it will ever go away. And that curiosity, for life in general. And that's how I lead my life. But anyway, coming back into industry, I think the work then that was done and followed after the masters really influenced a lot of what we see in terms of brands such as the TFG Group, where I had the opportunity to hold a conference with the marketing directors, marketing managers, brand managers, talking specifically about my findings in my study and how that could have, influence on how brands do things. So that was really awesome because an execution from them, particularly from the beauty sector within the business, adopted some of the insights, which is really cool. And then obviously from an industry point of view, conversations have continued, which led to the recognition by the World International Marketing, or rather International Women in Marketing Institution in London. Where I was, acknowledged as, one of the advocates championing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Never mind what is happening right now in terms of the world, or at least the rest of the world. But what is quite inspiring is that there are still majority of the countries that had sort of purported their support for diversity, equity, and inclusion are still continuing with it, regardless of the challenges that we're facing, right?
Okay.
When we look at other parts of the world. So yes, that was one of my most prized accolades from an industry point of view. But I've also been on many other judging platforms, specifically where I started at a very, very young age as a young judge, and worked my way up to, chairperson of that particular organization.
That's awesome.
And then, of course, working my way into being a senior judge, where I was judging with fellow industry thinkers. So
Exciting.
that's been my journey in a nutshell. I mean, there's so much more that I can dwell on, but I think I'll leave it. I'll leave it there and give people an opportunity to go search for me if they want to.
I think there's even more that's in there. So basically, you're very well equipped to proceed into this new experience of judging at Cannes Lions. So I know that I reiterated. So Cannes Lions is like simply the Oscars of advertising. This is the benchmark where creatives put themselves in, and also the agencies to get a medal. Or even get any recognition like shortlists and the medals that follow.
Yeah.
These go through a very strenuous process. It goes number one, it's quite expensive to enter it. So the agencies, the brand needs to really believe in the work in order to process to it, and a lot of the times it's amazing work.
Yeah,
there is possibly in different categories. So each Cannes Lions award has different categories. There's I can't remember all of them. That's how many there are.
yeah.
There's like entertainment, there's pharmaceuticals, there's health,
There's
PR,
out of home, radio,
print, direct.
Yeah, like
It's
there's
so
a
many.
lot. There absolutely is a lot.
So these categories have a section of judges from around the world. And for the longest time, it's always been from perspective from my perspective is it's always like the usuals. It's always like the usual countries, the larger ones. There's America, there's Brazil, most European countries, some Asian, and for the early days, Africa and South Africa was always been excluded, which I think there's probably reasons behind that at that time, because we weren't putting our work at that level until there was a point. I think I don't know the exact date, but like early 2000s, where our work started getting recognized. We got a bit of more awards. Once you get one, you kind of want to get more. So the perspective now then shifted to more broaden the horizons of the world. Thankfully, more recent years, South Africa got more involved with winning some awards, as well as participating in the jury. So yeah, that's the context of how the juries works. Each category has it's different. It varies, but like it goes from like 900 entries to 2,000. And fortunately and unfortunately, there's a very select few people that really filters through this until it gets to gold. The percentage of the gold to be won is like 1% or maybe even less, because the amounts of entries. So, having said that, when you were nominated, what did you think it was the thing that caught the Cannes Lions' eye?
Specifically about me, or just
so being like the judge. So like, what do you think it was the thing that like cool Khangelani from South Africa is worthy of participating?
I think just to extend to, I guess, your narration, just in terms of the focus now specifically being on Africa, it's a very important point to make, and a concerted effort that I believe that Cannes Lions are actually making in terms of being more inclusive of different voices that come from different parts of the world, specifically Africa. And yes, it is a daunting task, especially when you start going into the finer detail in terms of the representation. I mean, I look at myself as an example in the PR sector. I'm the only South African, but there are obviously other Africans who are in other parts of the world, which is very exciting to see. So yes, there's a concerted effort to be more inclusive. And I think what probably drew people who, I guess, the decision makers behind who becomes a juror is a number of things. Probably from an industry point of view, we do peer reviews, right? And I don't believe that happened or did not happen in this particular instance. So peer reviewing, I think, was important. I also do think, because of the kind of work that I do and the kind of work that I put out that is specifically directed at a cause, which is around representation, which is around, the true meaning of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is not something that we can ignore. And if indeed Can Lions is for that, then they need to, I guess, work with advocates who believe in that, not only just from a societal point of view, but obviously from an industry perspective. So the work that has been put out, I think, speaks for itself. What I stand for as a brand, is very clear. And I think also just the amazing work that we do as a company and as a department, which of course we welcome many people who want to work with us to come on board. But for this, I think that is probably one of the key things that they looked out for in terms of output and really the gravitas behind my brand.
And I think you touched on a very important point, and it's the different voices. And I know that and this is assumption that coming from Asia or Europe and South America, they all have their perspective of how they view work. And I had this conversation come up on previous episode is insights come very deep into different cultures. South Africa and Africa is so deep with so much like nuances and stuff like that. You need that voice to say, okay, cool. This idea sits like this because of this insight, and it's rich in that insight. Therefore, it should be recognized by X. And I know that's very vague because it's like it's almost like the point of measure when these awards gets marked on. So as a juror, you sift through different work, and unfortunately, there's so many to go through. You kind of need to have like a system of some sort. Tell me about your experience after that. So before you go to the Cannes ones, what does your past experience like in terms of judging? Were there similarities when you start picking out different work?
Yeah. So I will say that there is a stark difference between in terms of volume, right? But the process that you follow as a judge is very similar in terms of understanding the context and then why the idea or the work should be considered from APR or any of the other categories, right? And then you go into providing detail around how you went, about your research, how you then put together your idea, and then how it was executed, and finally what was achieved. I think those are the key markers of a successful entry. And I must say, there are a lot of works that obviously put out there, and it's very difficult to arrive at a shortlist. And so just because work hasn't necessarily made it to shortlist, it doesn't mean it isn't good. It's just that you have to be so particular, and I don't want to say ruthless necessarily, because again, you acknowledge the weight of the work, but then there are finer things that you start looking out for, which is very similar to a process that is and has been followed, at least from a South Africa point of view, around what then doesn't constitute the work as award-winning, because it ticks all the boxes of why it should win. You now have to start looking at why it potentially couldn't work. And you do this basically comparing it to what is in front of you, not because of how you feel, but based on what is in front of you. Yes, to a large degree, I think you can't divorce yourself from how you feel. Which is why we've undergone a process specifically that looks at how we deal with bias and how that is defined. So we undergo that training before you actually start looking at the work, which is basically Cannes has partnered with a third-party institution that takes all of the judges through this course, basically breaks it down, what bias is. We've learned that there are, I think, 7 main sort of types of bias, understanding those, and then, how do you then deal with it? And I think the most important part is obviously acknowledging that you're human and you will always have resonance with a particular sort of subject matter based on your socialization, based on your environment. So it becomes very important for you to be aware of that. But once you're aware of it, you have to sort of separate that from what is in front of you.
That is so interesting.
Right. And it's not an easy job by no means.
That's why it's like so interesting.
By no means, yeah. Because I mean, as a queer person, as an example, I probably would have a bias to any work that specifically speaks to representation, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Lean forward because it speaks to you.
Exactly. It speaks to me, it speaks to my community and my lived experience. However, when I look at other works, I have to give them the credit that is due. And I think how we then solve that is by then understanding what is the idea behind this work, right? And what is it informed by? Then you start your judging process from that particular process or from that particular point. And obviously following the rubric that has been set out in terms of the entry and how people have gone about putting it together. I will acknowledge what you said. Putting together entries, first of all, putting in an entry is expensive, but putting them together...
Oh, it's an art form.
100%.
It's an art form.
And I think that is something people should not take for granted when they want to be part of such an institution or recognized at this level, because people are putting in the work. People are really putting in the work. And honestly, for judges, what probably speaks more to them is that video piece that compiles and shows you what you started with and how it ended. And of course, the detail in terms of you explaining how certain things, came about. And I think what they've introduced that's fairly new this year is around context from which the entries come from. That's because we're judges that come from different places and backgrounds. And so I may not understand the nuances from Taiwan or nuances from Ireland or India or Brazil, all of which, by the way, are countries that have put forward brilliant work. And in terms of my analyses of trends and, overview, there's really amazing work coming from those countries. So yeah, that's about it.
And I think I forgot to mention, like within those thousands of entries, each one of them has a video, and these are what we call case study videos.
Yes,
these are roughly 2 minutes long. So if you think 2 minutes times by 2,000,
yes,
poor people are going through this. So that's why in the 2 minutes, every second counts. Absolutely. That you have to sell the idea, because you're not in the room to sell your idea. Everything that needs to be said and has to be said is within these 2 minutes.
It's true.
And I'm a nerd when it comes to candidate lines. I've watched so many that I need to write it down. But the criteria I normally have is almost like a 3-part thing. It's quite. I try to break it down in the most simplest form. So it's almost like, what's the problem? What's the idea?
Yes.
And the solution. So it's idea/solution.
Yes.
And then what's the results? And those 3 are simply the things that go hand in hand. And as you mentioned before, it's like you might find a very good problem, but as a solution, it's like it kind of falls short or doesn't fall short. And that's where the gauging thing. And then after that, was the results the thing that took it home? And upon watching these 3 categories or these 3 sections, did it land? Was it able for people to understand? And I think that goes back to what you were saying before. You need a bit of context for the idea to have landed properly.
100%.
And all that, I always say this, it's almost like the stars have to be aligned. Like in order for the piece of work to exist, and how the case study gets put together, and the juries have to watch through all this, understand it, and then talk about it. And I think that's why it's so critical for jurors from different parts of the world to kind of have that thing. Removing yourself as a person, that is so tough, because like I know that you have to undergo that biases thing, and I think it's relevant, because it's almost like simplest form is like if you like cats and not dogs, and this campaign is all about dogs, but it's for that audience, it's for that community. You do have to remove yourself as a personal state to say,
Yeah.
cool, I need to see this idea as it sits. Does it land? Do I understand it? And is it right for the audience? And all these things come in play to understand it.
Yeah.
So
I think what's also quite important, though, is understanding that as creators, we're not just creating work for ourselves. These works are for audiences and people that we want to resonate with. And so whenever we are coming up with ideas, that is the number one thing, or at least when we're judging, that's also something that we look at, in terms of the impact that it will have in society. The scalability as well is quite important, insofar as if it is applied in this one market, could I see it being adopted and adapted into a different market? Because if an idea is that good, we should be able to apply to different environments.
That becomes a discussion.
But let me tell you, our president for this particular category, Tom Beckham, who is the global creative director, I believe, at Wonderman, gave us two scenarios. Well, an analogy, basically, of the zoo and the rest of the world.
Okay.
So are we creating work so that people can just see it now and ogle over it right now? Or do we want it to have major impact and reverberate outside of these spaces? So it becomes very important for you to be able to decipher, the strength of an idea and it solving a societal issue, but also having impact in terms of the brand that you are representing, because these ideas don't exist in a silo and are not just created by a creative, right? So thirdly, from a brand point of view, is it also authentic to them? So are you going to say, just because diversity, equity, and inclusion is trending right now, that every single brand needs to create campaigns based on what is trending right now? Is that going to be believable? We know that consumers right now are very smart and they are able to call out brands for ingenuous work. So those are the things that we also look out for and have to debate.
And that takes a toll on you, because you put this forward and you're like, okay, cool, there's a point of controversy and you have to speak about your opinions, because that's why you're there, because your opinions matter, your perspective matters.
Yes.
Which is why that's all put in consideration in order for it to win something. And that's why the Cannes Lion is seen as that prestigious award show, because of that, because of the strict things that it goes through. Please tell me, how's it been in terms of the process? You kind of told me in the beginning of what's happening with you. You've kind of seen some things.
Yes.
What is the mindset you have to put yourself in order to go through this, the first, what do you call it? Like the full filtration process?
Yes. As shortlisting jurors will then get the opportunity to debate and be in the same room with other judges.
You got an email.
In France. So that's quite exciting. But going back, I guess, to your question, which is around, my experience thus far, I think the attitude that I already have, an outlook on life, which is a studious one and always wanting to learn something and be able to integrate it into things, is very helpful. Because if you're going to come into this process as an all-knowing body and thinking of yourself as this omnipotent God, I promise you it is going to be so difficult, because everything that you see challenges you at the core, right? In terms of your beliefs, but also in terms of how you do things and how you're used to your market operating. So for me, it's been a very transformative experience thus far. I've learned so much. I've been reignited as well in terms of my passion and love for what I do. And I think it's because of the many great works that I'm seeing coming from all over the world. And what's quite interesting for me as well is we've always idealized and put continents such as the United States of America as well as Europe to the highest pedestal. But where I've been fundamentally, I guess, challenged and transformed in my thinking is when I see work coming from Brazil, when I see work coming from India, when I see work coming from, Taiwan and all these other Asian countries. And I'm just like, guys, we can't just, look at these two continents and think that's where it ends. So it's been very transformative in that regard. It's opened up my mind, in terms of the different markets that exist and how they go about solving real issues, but also meeting business objectives. And I know a lot of the time, the what we are always solving for is around increasing awareness scores and brand health scores. But also at the same time, what's been very great to see with the works that we've gone through thus far is how they've actually impacted bottom line, how they've impacted society, how they've impacted the formulation or reformulation even of legislation around different parts of the world. I can't really speak too much to it, but I can speak to themes which really center around the recognition of women, particularly in sports, but also from a cultural context point of view, where there are staunch ways of doing things in particular countries. And it's been really cool to see how different brands are coming in and challenging that and empowering those societies to see things in a different light and the response thereof. Which is why I was saying it becomes super important that you do work that resonates with your audience, but also resonates with the core values of your brand and what you stand for.
That's so critical, eh? Like, because then what's the point of the campaign? Like you can always do some lovely work, like Nike can do some amazing art piece, but then it's like, does it resonate? Does it speak to the right things? I love it. What you started off with is being a student of everything. And I think and the reason why I feel that way, because I do the same thing.
Yes.
I don't go in and say I'm all knowing or anything, because what happens is that you kind of let your guard down in terms of that pressure. If you are the all knowing, then it's like you should know everything. You're like, oh crap, now I'm pressured to answer everything. But by doing so, just by saying that you're the student of everything, I'm learning stuff. So if you do trip and fumble, it's like, okay, cool.
And it's okay.
It's okay.
Yes.
And obviously you don't do it intentionally, but it's like genuinely say that I didn't know certain things. And, I am too, like I've got my perspective of being a CD, a creative director, but I know that there's so many other people are much more worthy than I am, or I feel, but I'm a student. I'm always learning, which hence speaking to the people like you and your perspective and guiding the audience, the people that are watching the things you're doing in that process. So you've touched on a few themes, and I know that you have to keep it quite confidential what you've been busy with. So people that really picked up on what Khangi is saying is that there's a certain thing that's happening within these awards. How many have you gone through so far, and how many more you still have to go?
Geez, so for this first round, I know that we were tasked with 300 each. So I imagine that there will be, more to come. So I've gone through, I think, just over half of them. Just over. And they are due in the next probably 10 days, the remaining. So balancing, obviously doing this work, which is very noble. And I think obviously an opportunity for us to be exposed and seen as people. I don't take that for granted at all. But I do believe that I'm not doing it myself a disservice by taking my time also, because you want to be fair in your judgment and in your scoring, and give the work the honor it deserves in terms of the amount of effort that people have put in to design, the presentations, put together the case studies, and of course, explaining the work. So yes, it is a bit of a
It's almost like, so I've got this thing called the sleep test.
Yeah.
So it's like you're so ingrained in it, and then like you have to remove yourself a little bit just so you can go back into it. Like, cool, now I've got a fresh pair of eyes, a fresher mind, I'm more awake.
Yeah.
And then you take it again and see, okay, cool, the stuff that you saw previously, what does it sit, does it land? Okay, cool, let's move on.
100%.
You mentioned that you said that you distributed 300. Does that mean that all the other jurors also get like their set and then they judge on it and then?
Yeah, look, I'm not particularly sure, but I think we probably are looking at the same kind of work.
Okay.
Especially because we need to arrive at a shortlist for the category.
Yes.
As a whole, so it would make sense that we're all looking at the same.
Okay, cool.
Work. Yeah.
Okay, and then what do you think is the next step to that?
Yes.
Because you said this is the first phase. What would be the second?
So obviously we will then have the shortlist from the works that have been put together.
That's been held and
announced. Yeah. But I think before we even get to the announcements, we probably will have another connect as the judges, just to get an understanding of how we've scored the different works, because there's a whole system and process that is followed that monitors us as we're actually doing the judging. Especially, again, I think just to get rid of biases and just your attention in terms of how much time is spent on each entry. So we'll probably get feedback on that. And then obviously work then that has been shortlisted will be discussed. And then it will be debated, I guess, in France as well, with the awarding judges. Yes.
So you still need to go to Nice. Is it Nice?
It's Cannes, yeah.
Where Cannes Lions is going to be held. So you still need to sit in a room. So you meet all your jury buddies and you kind of hash it out to whittle it down. Have you met the juries yet?
So I've met my fellow juries online as a start, which was really cool. With our judge president, Tom, as mentioned, we've all sort of like connected as well across our different professional platforms. And I'm looking forward to meeting them. I must say, I feel like I'm one of the youngest people. Yes, in this particular category. A lot of the judges have been in the industry for a very long time. They are CEOs and MDs and founders of all these wonderful and amazing companies. So it really is a privilege for me to sit on it and be able to contribute. I come in obviously quite confident as well, because I do have a particular view and perspective of life and the industry and essentially where it should be. So that makes me more than worthy to be a part of those conversations. But it was an interesting observation, because you asked, have I met the guys? And yes, I have. A very interesting bunch of people, and quite diverse as well, which is very important.
Wow, like it's so fascinating to be in front of. I can't remember who I spoke about this. Is there are times in my life that I've been in a room with freaking amazing, smart people.
Yeah,
and to be involved and to just converse and just absorb everything they have to say is like possibly the best experience that you can have.
They always say there's a problem if you're the only smart person in the room.
Yeah, being in the wrong room.
Exactly. So I'm very excited also at the prospects of meeting them physically and engaging in the different workshops that we will be a part of, and deliberating essentially on the works that finally get awarded. So yeah.
Okay. And then moving on to when you eventually go, what do you think is going to happen, and what have they told you what you're going to be doing?
Not necessarily. I
Oh,
guess we're just
secret.
taking it one step at a time. But there is a portal that exists that gives us all the information that we need. In terms of the different workshops, one I definitely know that there'll be workshops that we'll be attending. There'll be mixes where we're networking with fellow industry people, which I'm very much excited for. And of course, attending the award nights for the work that have been recognized. So that is something that I'm very much looking forward to.
I'm so excited for you. Wow.
It's going to be fun.
Did you prepare something that you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, look, we can definitely just go through high level. So, in terms of what we have been seeing, or at least what I've seen, whilst judging these awards, and I think a presentation that I would absolutely love to share with my fellow judges is the evolution that we are seeing from a practice point of view. Obviously, PR for a lot of people is known as just the guys and the people that send out communication to media to get brands out there. That is a very small part of what we do.
Is it for people who don't know what PR is, public relations?
Yes.
Put it in a very simplified way of what is it that you do,
Yes.
and what is it about, and why is it important?
So what we do, we make you famous. Yeah, that is true.
That's in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yes. But I think in a more sort of thoughtful manner, it is about crafting meaningful brand messages that will resonate with consumers across different marketplaces. Now, that is what the practice is. Then there are channels that are used to be able to amplify those messages, such as TV, radio, social media, influencers, etc. So an understanding of those channels becomes very important, because not all brands necessarily will communicate on those platforms, and not all of those platforms are necessarily right for the kind of communication that you're putting out. Which is why I think even when I look at the work that has been produced, there is a move from traditional media to a move from digital media only, because these two have often been, seen as separate entities that need to compete with each other. And actually, what I've seen with the work that is, being produced and presented is an integrated media focus is incredibly important. And that also speaks very much to the integration between the different sort of disciplines that exist within advertising, strategy, creative, PR, social media, experiential even. All of these things exist to be able to create an experience and an environment for consumers to be able to interact and understand what brands stand for, and ultimately follow the call to action, which is obviously them buying product and supporting. But that isn't the main sort of reason why ideas are formed. The support and financial sort of, or I think the correct sort of terminology there is the equity part of it becomes a secondary focus. It isn't necessarily the main reason for being, which I think is an incredibly important thing to understand, and carry out, which is what we have seen a lot of across the different entries. So when we are judging, there are several sort of sectors and categories under PR, and I would assume that is very much the same sort of thing that happens with other categories, that we look at work that has been entered under. So as an example, healthcare would be one. Social engagement, as well as influencer marketing, real-time response sector, and then there will be excellence in PR craft, and then culture and context, local brand, and then culture and context in terms of culture engagement. Those are the categories that I've looked at thus far. I think the part that I wanted to focus on in terms of the understanding of the sectors is it's so important, incredibly important, that markets and the people that represent obviously those brands understand what categories they're entering and what sector within those categories they're entering. Because what has tended to happen is that some campaigns which are exceptionally well executed are entered into the wrong category or sector.
That is such a shame.
PR has 7 or 8 other sectors, and they all have a description on the website in terms of what they're meant to achieve.
Because within that category, it's almost like because you need to award that piece of work based on what this exact category is about. So say, for instance, PR, did it land the criterias that may sit within PR? I want to circle back to the different channels. So that's what you said, and we had spoken about this before, is that there's creative, there's ideas, but PR cannot sit apart from that. It's almost like I think it's called matching luggage. Is that when you see this piece of media, does the idea work within what you're the channel that you're seeing? So PR also involved with the influencers, for instance. Do they carry the same idea? Does it work for the idea? Not everyone can use influencers. It's not necessarily this idea works in PR. So it's almost like they're force fitting it in this category. And shame per you, you have to be that, the guard to say like, cool, I'm not going to let you in, and I cannot judge on these points because you didn't meet those criteria.
Exactly.
So do you just ignore them, or what do you do? You still need to give it.
It's the hardest thing to do. It honestly is the hardest thing to do because, again, the work and the idea, incredible, but has been entered into the wrong sector. So how the judging process basically works is that you have to score from 1 to 9. 1 to 3 means, sorry, it's not going to go forward. 4 to 6 potentially can be a shortlist, and from 6 or 7 to 9, that is a shortlist based on what you are looking at and what you're judging.
That means from 7 to 9, you haven't given it bronze, silver, gold yet. It just says you're putting it in a pool of to be looked at.
Yes.
And then are you part of that next process?
So how it basically works is obviously Cannes has judges that shortlist, then they have awarding judges, and that's it.
Okay.
So I'm part of the shortlisting judge,
which is super
panel,
important.
Which is incredibly important because if you think about it, the awarding judges don't have any work to look at if we haven't shortlisted anything. And brands don't get to be seen if we haven't given our opinion on what should be shortlisted. So the role of a shortlisting judge, I think, is incredibly important.
100%.
And the awarding judge obviously just does the work of saying, kudos, we believe that it should win based on A, B, and C. So,
I know that when we, with my past experience of, I judged Out of the Month, a local awards show, and every month people enter these work that it's had happened recently, and then you judge upon them. There was this process. What we did was, say for instance, it didn't make it to a shortlist, but it was really good, but there was for all the rights and purposes, like it fitted the category. There's something about it was a miss, but it was worth bringing back. Do you think that they'll do that for this?
Look, because of how systematic the process is, I don't think there is room for that.
That's why it's so strict at the beginning.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
I don't think there is room for that.
Okay.
How we arrive at that short list is based off of a scoring system that has been set up, not how we feel or whatever. And that's just in regard to shortlisting. Now, I'm not particularly sure what the process the awarding judges will then, follow, because I imagine that, from the pool of work that we've said should be shortlisted listed, there's
Mm,
the work that has to be done of which one is bronze, which one is silver, which one is gold, etc.
okay.
Which I suppose will then allow for such debates
Hmm.
to take place.
Okay. So you're going to be going to France and enjoying yourself. Apart from that, obviously you're going to be involved with lots of happenings, some talks maybe, and then the judging process would happen. So take me through the what you think will happen. So you'll leading up to the time, and then before going to the next phase, you'll be now sifting through, throwing your opinions
Mm.
here and there, and then those work will then be shortlisted for the next group. Then what happens then? Are you just there to absorb
Yeah,
and connect,
yeah.
and then your job is done after that?
I think that's probably it. It's
Okay.
it's an opportunity to get to connect with the people that have been shortlisted as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, put a face behind the name, and a feeling
Mm-hmm.
behind the face. Yeah, so I think that is going to be an incredibly exciting part of the journey. I think also just the networking opportunities and probably informing what the report looks like for 2026,
Okay.
um, insofar as trends, which is why I've done the job of actually jotting down what I think are some of the overview trends and what we should be looking forward to in 2026. Speaking on that note, actually, I think it's been very interesting to see how predictions from 2024 around AI and technology have
Mm-hmm.
actually come into real life and real works
Mm-hmm.
that are produced by many brands and many agencies. It's encouraging, and I think what it says is that there's space for us to evolve as an industry and integrate tools that will improve efficiencies, but also outputs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and enhance ideas, bring them to life, which I'm very proud to say, even from a local point of view, with the work that we are doing, we have been able to integrate some of those technological advancements to help us to be able to create the kind of work that we have for our clients. I think we're going to see a lot more emphasis on that. In 2026, the integration once again
Mm-hmm.
between disciplines becomes important because then it informs what becomes a topical sort of campaign that
Mm-hmm.
will yield results. I'm particularly encouraged, like I said, by countries such as Brazil and India, and I look forward to see how actually they perform
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to awarding night. And yeah,
Because that's so interesting. Because you have your own, you have your opinions, you put it through, and it's almost like you let it go, and you're like, for me, it's almost like I always make those little bets in my head. I'm like, I've got my reserve thing, and like I'd like to know what other people thought of it and
mm,
see where it lands.
yeah,
And sometimes, you've predicted right, and you're like, it became gold or it became silver. It's worthy of people's attention and
mm,
the medal. And you spoke about trends, and that's been a very topical thing, especially that's on everyone's lips right now is the AI.
yes,
Um, I know that last year there was a few that did really well. By help of AI, they produce these beautiful campaigns, and AI has been shifted, not even just year to year, like almost month to month, week to week,
mm,
and it's evolved so dramatically that it's so interesting at how it would affect our industry.
mm,
Like I even have this very controversial question. It's that what happens to models?
yeah,
Are models even in trouble? Because I
mm,
see that you can even make AI avatars holding a product now. It's like
mm,
that's what models do. It's like what
yeah,
happens to them? And it and I think, and I'm assuming that even the why when AI conversation comes up, creatives like either up in arms or they're for it.
Yeah.
And you either I haven't seen a middle ground. Like there's always like a for and against, and there's this whole debate on whether are our jobs on the line or is it going to escalate our jobs.
Yeah.
What do you think? I'm sure you, at this
Yes.
point you've got some sort of opinion on AI, how it affects your world.
Yeah.
What do you think how it affects you now and where it's going to
Yeah.
take us through?
First of all, I don't, I have to acknowledge, how people feel about it and sort of the anxiety that it causes, or that it has caused. I acknowledge that. But I think also at the same time, it becomes incredibly important for us to realize what we can use it for to enhance what we already do. Because I'm of the view that AI is not and can never replace humans entirely.
100%.
And respond to things in real time the way that we are able to, which is why the human element is incredibly important when you're looking at, the integration of AI and technology into the work that we do. So for me, I always just see it as an opportunity to just enhance and magnify what we're already doing, or what we're able to do as creatives, because I believe I'm a creator myself too, in terms of these brand messages that we curate. And an example that I can think of comes from Belgium and how they were able to create and solve for a challenge that specifically spoke to men's mental health as an insight, and what they were able to do with AI to be able to address that conversation whilst creators were in the room helping to manipulate and manage the process with AI. So I think for me, it's an opportunity to see how it can be used to enhance what we already do.
And
100%.
what you're basically saying as well is it's a tool. It's a tool that you use to get to a point where you solve the problem. And often when the team that I always try to guide is, don't let the technology or tool lead the idea. And then and because it's like cool, say for instance, I can't remember, there was like a new tech that's in out of home. They're like, oh, but you'll put it here and then it'll look really cool. And I'm like, where's the idea? Like the tool is the thing that amplifies the idea. Because if you don't have an insight and a great idea, what you're amplifying is just nothing, or you have nothing to start with.
What you're saying is very much a provocation that our president, specifically for the category that we worked in, was, when you are judging work, look at the idea first before you look at the channel. And that's what I would probably say to creators as well, that it's incredibly important to come up with the idea and use AI as a channel to execute. Because again, when we're judging, that is what we're going to be looking for. It's not a matter of how effective is AI. No, it's what is the idea.
And why it's more critical to reiterate this time and time again is because AI has made it so easy to just go, cool, this is what I need to produce, and there, my job's done. But it isn't. AI is able to take you from point A to B, but like 80% of the way. That last 20% to really hit it home, really need that human factor, the human interaction. I always say this, and a lot of the podcasts I've listened to also derived at the same place, is that the barrier of entry has become very low because of AI and the access of, but where the differentiation point is taste. It always boils down to taste, because everyone can make the great AI image, but does it look really cool? What is the things I'm looking for? I'll actually have a content idea of how to spot AI images. If you are interested, just drop a comment below or somewhere, tell me that you're interested, and I'll make one of that. Cool. So as mentioned as the beginning of the session, we will still go through a process when Khangi is there.
Yes.
Experiencing can lines at the warm Nice, France.
Yes.
The beautiful beaches. I cannot imagine how beautiful it will be. I always say it's like a fun fair for creatives.
Yes.
One of my the influencers that I admire so much, he was there last year, and he was taking us through like what to expect. And I'm so excited for you. Like we'll take you through what the things that Khangi is experiencing, what the things you're seeing on the ground, and just the blow by blow of what's happening. And then after that, we'll have another wrap up and all the learnings that you've been doing and all the exciting things that you're going to be involved with, the people you're going to meet. And we'll have a conversation around that.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions that I have not asked that is quite critical to know before we move forward?
Look, I think we've definitely covered the bases for now in terms of what people can look forward to. Mine would just be to encourage your viewers and our followers basically to keep their eyes essentially on the platform, because I will be coming with daily updates perhaps of what's happening on the ground, and basically giving a view of what is happening at the awards themselves. So I don't think there's anything we haven't chatted about at length now, but there's certainly a lot more to look forward to, so you better make sure you come back.
So also, if you have any additional question that we should have covered at this point, drop a message below so that we all know to cover it in our next session. I'm super excited.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
This is just the beginning.
It's just the beginning, guys. And let's do great stuff.
Cool. That's it.
Oh, wow, that was amazing. Oh, it's really good. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes, I did. I really did. And I think we have to continue on this. It can't be a once-off. I don't
I'm
think
happy.
I'm happy. It's a once-off situation. And I have a good feeling about this. So
okay.
Yeah.
No, because it's this is mainly because I always on my previous podcast I was saying that how interesting is that everyone in advertising will have these conversations, and I always thought to myself, wouldn't it be so cool if like my junior self or a junior were to hear these conversations, and they'll learn so much. You don't pick this up at school.
No.
You always pick them up along the way.
Yeah.
And I always wished that, at some point, I knew it sooner,
Yeah. So that's what this platform is for.
Yeah.
To create that content. And
so chasing lions.
Yeah. Chasing lions. That's amazing.